Throughout history, there have been reports of people seeing strange things in the sky that they couldn't quite explain. A famous example of this is the Roman Emperor Constantine, who claimed to have seen a glowing symbol in the sky, which would later be interpreted as a cross. In the early morning of April 14th, 1561, residents of the Bavarian town of Nuremberg would see a strange sight in the sky. As they watched, hundreds of spears, cylinders, and other odd-shaped objects would dart around the sky and appeared to be fighting one another. This celestial phenomenon allegedly lasted for about an hour and has baffled people ever since it happened. A broadsheet news article printed in April 1561 describes a mass sighting of a celestial phenomena that occurred in Nuremberg. The broadsheet states that in the early morning hours of April 14th, 1561, many people would see a, quote, dreadful apparition occurring on the sun. This apparition was seen in the city as well as in the country by many men and women. As the sun rose in the sky, people could see two blood-red crescents at its center, while red and black balls were flanking it on all four sides. They could also see a handful of red crosses and enormous splashes of bright red coloring. As the people watched, these objects started fighting with one another, darting all over the sky erratically for about an hour. According to the broadsheet, the fighting became so ferocious that these shapes in the sky appeared to become so tired from their exertions that they fell burning from the sky before going up in a cloud of immense smoke. Then, after this battle in the sky, people would report seeing an enormous black object that resembled a spear with its point pointing to the west. This broadsheet was written by Hans Glasser, and his conclusion is that this vision in the sky was a message from God. The 1561 celestial phenomenon wasn't the only one of its kind. A pamphlet that was published in 1566 in Basel, Switzerland, written by historian Samuel Coccius, describes a series of strange shapes that were seen in the sky above Basel over the course of a few days. The pamphlet describes how the sun suddenly took on a different shape and color, how much of the sun's light seemed to dim, and how it appeared no bigger than the full moon. And it also described how the sun appeared to weep tears of blood. The next day when the sun rose, the sky seemed blood red and fiery. Then on August 7th, there were reports of people seeing large black spears flying across the sky. According to the pamphlet, these shapes appeared as if they were in a fight, and they would glow a fiery red color before crumbling and extinguishing. Ever since that day in Nuremberg, many have tried to interpret what actually happened that day in April. The phenomenon that was described over Nuremberg has been interpreted by some UFO enthusiasts as an aerial battle of possible extraterrestrial origin. But like many UFO theories, that idea is dismissed by most. Author Carl Jung brought the woodcut by Hans Glasser to the attention of modern culture when it was published in his book Flying Saucers, A Modern Myth of Things Seen in the Skies. In the book, he wrote that this event, described by Glasser, was most likely a natural phenomenon, like a sundog, with religious or even military interpretation overlying it. Another thing that should be noted is that during the Middle Ages, there were other broadsheets published that used events in the sky almost as propaganda. For instance, there were descriptions of knights fighting each other with fiery swords, which was interpreted as a warning of a coming day of judgment. Both the 1561 and the 1566 events were interpreted as religious events. Many leaflets in the 15th and 16th centuries would write of miracles and sky spectacles. One thing that always needs to be done in sensational stories like this one is checking the source. I wasn't able to find much information on Hans Glasser beyond him being a woodcutter, a letter painter, and a letter printer, which he is listed as from 1538 in the office books of the city of Nuremberg. But looking at some of his artworks, there seems to be a lot of focus on religion and the occasional weird stuff like these bearded grapes. The fact that he seems very religiously focused might tie into his conclusion that the event witnessed in the sky in 1561 was a message from God. You do have to take into account how much artistic license was taken with this story. So with this in mind, it is possible that they saw something in the sky that Glasser then sensationalized a bit because he had a message that he wanted to spread. But that is of course just speculation. As for the event in Basel, I wasn't able to find anything on Samuel Coccius either, but the leaflet that he wrote, which reported the incident, was either co-written or published by a man named Samuel Aparius. And I was able to find some information about him. He was a Swiss typographer and a music publisher who set up a publishing house after being banned from the city of Bern for 4 years after a complaint of defamation. After returning to the city, he would find himself being expelled again from Bern after he printed songs that was seen as offensive to Catholic towns. Basically, he didn't seem to shy away from controversy. Another explanation for this celestial phenomenon is another phenomenon called a parhelion. A parhelion, or a sundog, is an atmospheric optical phenomenon. It consists of a bright spot which is around 22 degrees to the left and right of the sun. The term parhelion is from the Greek term for beside the sun, but it's more commonly known as a sundog, which is also traced back to ancient Greece, with these bright spots seemingly following the sun, like a pair of dogs following the gods around. How a parhelion might appear depends on the condition. The closer they are to the sun, the redder they will appear, and the color will shift from orange to blue the further out you get. Most often they appear as two bright spots on either side of the sun in a whitish color. A parhelion is the result of sunlight which passes through ice crystals contained within a cloud. The crystals will act as a prism, and this bends the light rays passing through them with a minimum deflection of 22 degrees. As they float down, the sunlight is refracted horizontally, which is what gives the appearance of two spots on either side of the sun. It's best seen when the sun is near the horizon, which makes them more common during the winter months when the sun is lower in the sky, though a parhelion can be seen during any season. In fact, a very bright full moon might also create this effect. This is called a paraselene, though it is very rare. And this is a small theory, but I should mention it. It is also possible that the event that was witnessed in the sky was a meteor shower or comets falling down the sky. I always try to keep an open mind to these types of things, but even though the idea of people living in Nuremberg or Basel witnessing an aerial battle between UFOs is interesting, I have my doubts that that's what happened. The Nuremberg description appears to be a mostly visual event, even though Glasser describes seeing smoke and what appears to be a battle and seeing all of these shapes crashing to the ground. He doesn't describe hearing any explosions or smelling any smoke. It appeared to be mostly visual. No smell, no sound, only the vision. This, in combination with the heavy religious interpretation and the fact that other broadsheets like this were common in the Middle Ages, have led most to believe that this event, if it actually happened, was most likely a natural phenomenon. A phenomenon that was given a religious interpretation and possibly even sensationalized by the ones reporting on it, such as Hans Glasser. So even though this event may have happened, we may not be getting the true account of what actually happened. Rather, we're being told a more fantastic interpretation of the event. But as I said, I always try to keep an open mind to these types of things, because the universe is way too vast for us to confidently say that we are alone. But I do have my doubts that there was a UFO battle in the skies over Nuremberg, or even Basel, or any other area where this was reported. But what do you think?